Hello friends, I'm back with another monologue, as it were. But this is really the moment. It's 1.5 years of my life, the lives of many others. Many of you who've contributed to the research, many of you have read reams and reams of writing. And those friends are here. Really, really grateful. I'll start by saying, and I don't know, perhaps many of you do not know what is 200 million artisans? So for those of you who are not familiar with our journey, 200 million artisans really started out as a COVID response initiative back in 2020. And it was really built by the kindness of strangers. People, professionals from every walk of life who are passionate about the handmade sector and who wanted to contribute, who wanted to support our artisan communities but did not know how. And there were many folks, incidentally, in India's, in the diasporic community back in Boston where 200M was set up, who really wanted to support but didn't know how because, again, we don't have information and we don't have data. So, today, after 3 years, we've transitioned into what we call an ecosystem enabler, reimagining the potential of handmade in India. We are, from working directly with artisan communities, today we stand committed to support our craft-led enterprises to become global powerhouses of inclusive and green production. To answer your question, Urvashi, we are there for you. And we do this by bridging gaps in knowledge, business support, and innovative financing through collaborative projects and platforms. And our ultimate goal, really, is to support pathways and solutions that are good for the planet and for our diverse communities. Our foray into research happened really out of necessity. We didn't actually set out to do research. During COVID, the one question I got, and I spoke to a lot of funders, believe you me, I spoke to a lot of funders. We could not find the answer. We got one question and they kept asking us, you claim the sector creates impact, but where is the data? Honestly, I didn't have an answer to that. And what was inherently missing was the data and the examples of success, examples of business models that our country has to showcase the true potential of India's handmade economy. Its artisanal heritage, its MSMEs, and that's how Business of Handmade was born. Business of Handmade is our research property and it is delivered to you in public good, as a public good. The first Business of Handmade, which perhaps a lot of you have read, launched in 2021. It focused on the relationship. Something that we don't talk about quite often when we talk about the handmade sector is the informality, the relationship between creative and cultural industries and the informality in India's artisan sector, and was presented as an immersive research because we believe that research should not be sitting in college libraries. It should be available and accessible to everybody to get informed. It was supported by the British Council, Policy and Evidence Center for the Creative Economy, and Parsons Steed Lab. And what most people don't know of the first edition of Business of Handmade was that it was 90% volunteer-led. So that was the team that built Business of Handmade. The second Business of Handmade, which is why we are all here, happened again in 2021 when the Catalytic Capital Consortium, a collaboration between the Rockefeller Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, the Omidyar Network, through its C3 grant-making program, supported 14 research projects across the world to help build the evidence base around the uses of catalytic capital and equipped investors with data, with knowledge and insights needed to drive deep and sustainable impact. I will get to the details of catalytic capital. It's an evolving idea, and we are still trying to understand it as well. 200M was one of the projects selected across the world and the only one in India. We were selected to study, document, and make recommendations for the role of catalytic capital in India's artisan sector with a specific focus on how it applies to craft-based micro, small, and medium businesses. Everybody in this room, every enterprise in this room is a micro, small, or medium business. Please correct me if I'm wrong, unless you're a very, very, a startup ready to exit, like Airbnb. Most of us are small businesses in this sector. During this project, our team spoke to over 40 investors, both in India and outside the world, 20 ecosystem actors, and over 25 enterprises representing different walks of life, different segments within the sector. Plus 516 enterprises across India filled out a 35-minute long survey. We all know nobody likes surveys. But thank you to every enterprise sitting here in this room. Thank you for taking those 35 to 40 minutes and sometimes longer to fill out the survey, and your insights have now built what is Business of Handmade, second edition. Many of you shared your dreams, your aspirations, your struggles, and many of all those good people, including the investors who took time to speak to us to help us understand what the sector is really all about, what they are struggling with. They're all in this room, and hopefully on behalf, really, of the entire team at 200 Million Artisans, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. This is honestly, this report is because of each one of you in this room. It wouldn't have happened if each one of you did not take the time, did not believe in the need to do this research. I'm going to try and distill 1.5 years of work in a few slides. I know there will be many more questions, but what the second edition of Business of Handmade really talks about is the takeaways are actually fairly clear, and it actually speaks to a lot of what Neelam talked about, what Mr. Chatterjee talked about, what Aparna talked about, and so on and so forth. There is no question, point number one, there is no question in our minds after 1.5 years that this is an untapped sector. It is a massive subset of India's creative economy, which today, of course, like I said earlier, is poised to meet or at least drive 10% of India's GDP by 2030. In the global south, in countries like India, where culture, to speak to Mr. Chatterjee's point, because culture plays a very significant role, we are choosing to call it the cultural economy, the larger sort of umbrella term within which Handmade operates. The first thing I will request each one of you is to think about the fact that this sector now needs a name. We cannot keep calling it handlooms, handicraft, artisanal, whatever else that we choose to call it. And we need to unify the activities that operate across the farm to consumer value chain. So it cannot be segmented in such a with loose terminology. And therefore, we have drawn from the framing used by our good friends at Powered by People, who came out with a similar report around the impact that the sector creates. I think that the report was called The Sector Whose Time Has Come, where they also mapped 3 countries. And we are choosing to call this sector Creative Manufacturing and Handmade in Business of Handmade, second edition. So that is the first takeaway that you should all sort of keep in mind. There are many, second big takeaway, there are many young people across the country building businesses in this sector. The cohort that we mapped has emerged in the last decade. So if you think that the handmade sector is full of NGOs, non-profits, yes, they are, and they are contributing to the sector. But if you think that it's only charity-led or only NGO-led, it is not. They're young people, young businesses, hungry and serious about growth, serious about brand building, and serious about profitability for their businesses. And they want to do this while taking the communities along, which is really rare. You don't see that in businesses, in many sort of startup-y businesses that we often come across. They are primarily, a lot of these businesses, if you want to get a sense of who they are, we often get asked, are these artisan businesses? Do artisans run it? We didn't make a differentiation between artisan businesses or creative businesses or whatever it is. As long as the business had a GST number, it got qualified to take the survey. It needed to be a formal business. That is what we mapped. And these businesses support anywhere between 10 artisans, depending on if you're a fashion enterprise, chances are you're supporting maybe 10 artisans. But if you are an enterprise like, say, Itokri or Neelam's enterprise, or even Rope's enterprise, could be supporting anywhere between 5,000 to 40,000 artisans. So it also depends on the business model. It is not one homogeneous whole. Not every enterprise is a homogeneous whole here. 70%, which we already knew, 70% of the enterprises support a workforce with an equal and more women skew, validating what we already know of the sector, that this is a gender-led sector, this is a women-led sector. However, there are many more diverse people from very diverse backgrounds, technology, finance, and so on and so forth, that are entering the sector and building businesses. So it is not just a cutesy sector and with enterprises building passion projects. It's not anymore. The lack of success stories in the CMH sector and a clear landscape mapping makes it really hard for investors. And many of the investors sitting here will be the first ones to say, "Samajh mein nahi aata hai, is sector ke saath kya karna hai." Correct me if I'm wrong. We've spoken to a lot of you, and I think that is the first complaint. It really makes it hard for investors, funders to understand the sector and its challenges. The sector and the enterprises are perceived as not being capital ready. Nobody wants investment, therefore we do not want to work with the sector. Our research, on the other hand, reveals that there is a massive demand and supply gap when it comes to access to capital. What I mean by that is 88% of the enterprises we mapped, and yes, 500 might be considered as a small data set, but I think it is a fairly significant data set because it is the first time this has been mapped anywhere in the world. 88% of the enterprises we mapped were self-financing their operations, not because they were choosing to out of necessity. These are mostly for-profit and hybrid enterprises we are speaking about. 91% of the enterprises we mapped are open to external financing. But only 65% of those enterprises, 65% of those enterprises don't even know where to begin. We don't even know whom to ask, where to go for answers. So it is a demand-supply problem. It is not because these enterprises do not want financing, and many of the enterprises sitting in this room currently will tell you they are looking for financing. And I differentiate between the word financing and investment. Investment, as we know it, is equity, exit hota hai, Airbnb exits, XYZ, all of that. No, we are talking about basic working capital needs for enterprises to run their operations, to build capacity, and so on and so forth. 78% of those enterprises struggle to access working capital. It's one of their biggest needs. It's basically to run operations. We don't have capital. Enterprises do not have capital to run operations. And it's just that is one of the biggest needs, and of course there are many other needs that we've mapped. The enterprises are finding it difficult. They're not finding the support they need to grow and scale their enterprises, be it when it comes to the right financing, the right business support, and even the right community, to Urvashi's point. Any business ecosystem, and for those who study entrepreneurial ecosystems, any business ecosystem or an innovation ecosystem needs all three for an ecosystem to exist, for an ecosystem to thrive, and that is how you can create growth and scale for enterprises within that ecosystem. The other point that I was mentioning, the many enterprises operating in the sector, to repeat what I said earlier, they're all seen as one homogeneous whole. And this is patently untrue. The research offers the first of its kind segmentation of craft-led enterprises. And they operate across the farm to consumer value chain. And if you are enterprises, what I would also encourage you to do is say, okay, what do I fit into? So that you can understand what your financing needs are and how best should you grow and scale your business. Along with the segmentation, we have also an entire pages, reams and reams of pages that also map the ideal financing approaches for each segment. So once you know what your segment is, and even as an investor, if you're trying to understand where your intervention is going to matter the most, the segments and the ideal financing fit would be a great value add for you. Now, why do we need to talk about these enterprises right now? Why do these enterprises even matter today? Because the world is changing. Because people like you and me, want to support local, we want to go sustainable, we look at, those hashtags and those little whatever that comes with labels that come with all our products, organic, certified, ye certified, wo certified. So does the rest of the world. India is also keeping up with the rest of the world around these matters. Therefore, if you have seen, and if you have noticed in the last 5 years, global retail conglomerates around the world are also recognizing this. IKEA, Walmart, Amazon, Pottery Barn, even Patagonia. Did you guys know that Patagonia is producing khadi in India? Anyone? Newsflash. They are all here in India working closely with our craft-led enterprises to build collaborative supply chains because this is not possible for them to do it alone. Why are they doing this? Because one, India has the workforce. Be it informal workforce or whatever workforce we choose to label it, it has the workforce. We have the skills, creative skills, design skills, every kind, tech skills, we have the skills as a nation. We also have the natural resources to drive local and regional production. That is why they're all here. Plus, one of the data points in our report talks about how, the domestic consumption in India contributes to 70% of the domestic consumption comes from India. So even if we do not look at global markets as of now, our consumers are consuming, and those are people like you and me. People in this room are the consumers of the future. What most people, and this is to answer a lot of the questions that Gaurav raised and others are raising, what most people forget is that enterprises in this sector are first and foremost retail-led. Livelihoods, gender inclusion, climate action, circularity, whatever it is that you want to label it, are a byproduct of someone building a business. Unless enterprises can sell their product, they cannot create impact. An enterprise grows if the enterprise can continue selling the product, continue supporting the artisan communities, continue training more artisan communities in whatever shape and form, they cannot grow. This means that we need to support our enterprises to build aspirational products that you and I, as consumers, want to buy. We should not have to buy artisanal products because it is creating gender inclusion or livelihoods or whatever it is. Yes, it is important from a strategic perspective as a nation, but that is the policy level. Those are decisions that have to be made at a policy level. But as in enterprises and people wanting to support enterprises, you have to amplify their retail abilities. And that could be in global markets or that could be in local markets. For our enterprises to build the right kind of products that the world wants to buy, we need design. To your point, Gaurav, we need design support, we need market access, local and international. They need efficient logistics. The reason why we buy from Amazon is because Amazon delivers tomorrow, if we want. There's Prime that allows us to do that. And they need the right finance. And we, in India, I reiterate, we have the skills, the talent, the workforce, and the resources to support this entire value chain. Currently, every portfolio, incidentally, this is not to call out any investors, please excuse me. Currently, every portfolio that we have come across puts enterprises in this sector into livelihoods, into gender, into circularity, or something else. This is a sector that fits squarely into Sustainable Development Goal 12, responsible consumption and production. It hits, as part of SDG 12, it addresses livelihoods, it addresses wages, it addresses inclusion, it addresses climate. What's therefore the middle ground to financing? So, correct me if I'm wrong, unless there's an enterprise who wants traditional financing, but most enterprises that we mapped do not favor traditional financing, be it in terms of debt or equity. And there are very few options available in the market for them. So when we asked them about catalytic capital, and we of course didn't say, do you like catalytic capital? We asked you, I think a lot of enterprises, what are the forms and instruments that you would prefer to use as part of your business development? And the answer from every enterprise was unanimous that they favor catalytic capital options. What is catalytic capital? Basically, it is capital, it is investment capital. Let's be very clear about it. It is investment capital that is patient, that is risk tolerant, which means it can take on higher risk compared to the more traditional kinds of equity financing. It is also concessionary, which means it will, it will say, okay, collateral, let's not give a collateral, but we'll work with you because you're creating impact. And it also is committed to creating impact. And the purpose of this is also to help enterprises create proof points, to build that sort of track record so that other third-party investors can also enter the market and start seeing the sector as being investable. 92% of the enterprises mapped favor catalytic capital. We've included case studies. Many of the case studies folks are in this room. As well as global best practices around how catalytic capital works on ground. So there are different instruments. You can look at each case study and say, okay, this will work for me, this is the stage of my enterprise, and this is likely to work for me. And just to give you a sense of how the catalytic capital spectrum works, and this is largely for investors, most of us are familiar with the impact investing, sustainable investing, all this kind of investing, but this is still investment which will expect 25% returns, or it will expect every enterprise to deliver high growth returns. Then comes philanthropic investing, wahan pe most of us are used to grants. Now, catalytic capital sits somewhere in the middle, where it says that for enterprises to become impact investment ready, they first have to build track records. They have to know how to use finance. They have to, have the business organization structure to be able to then say, okay, now we will scale at a certain rate. That's where catalytic capital investors come in, which means they are willing to take on a higher risk and say, because you're creating impact, we are willing to give you concessionary terms, and we are willing to work with you. So instead of delivering returns in, say, 3 years, we're willing to be patient with you for 5 years or 7 years. And there are many investors like that in this room also right now. I will, at this point, share a conversation we had with Mr. Chintan Vaishnav, the mission director of Atal Innovation Mission, as part of this research. He told us a story about the IT industry in India and how it became an industry in the first place. It happened because industry folks, people like you sitting in this room, said, and that included enterprises, it included industry actors, it included sector experts, and ecosystem actors who banded together to say we need to push the government to create better policies to create what we now know as the IT sector. And at that point is when NASSCOM was born. NASSCOM was the intermediary that created this bridge between policy level incentives, investors, techies, and so on and so forth. And that kind of collaboration was needed. So he says there is a need for disruptive models to be developed to help propel the handmade sector forward. This is also an opportunity to create policies and champion collaboration and co-creation among the government, private players, and craft-led enterprises to take handmade to the world. If we have to make handmade as sexy as IT or even yoga, this is an opportunity for each one of us to put our thinking hats on, and I will definitely encourage and invite and welcome the investors and funders in this room, because the innovation now needs to come from you, to collaborate and to support India's craft-led enterprises to become global powerhouses of inclusive and green production. What can you expect from the report? So very quickly, challenges and opportunities of the CMH sector and what each one of you can do. Tangible data and need gaps. Please use the data to advocate for better policies, for better investment systems, and where investors can really intervene to help the sector achieve the dynamic growth, profitability, and recognition. Case studies and global best practices. There are about 8 of them from India, about 6 or 7 of them globally. And they do offer a nuanced understanding of what financing is suitable. And of course, the final report includes in-depth analysis of the data collected and is also, like last time, supplemented with a website. So if you go to businessofhandmade2.com, you will find the report, you will find the executive summary, and you will also find, the website is a resource in itself. And with that, I present Business of Handmade, second edition, Financing a Handmade Revolution, How Catalytic Capital Can Jumpstart India's Cultural Economy. Thank you to each one of you. I'm not done. Sorry. Sorry to disappoint. This incredible journey, now I have a long list of thank yous. Please bear with me, but it's important. This incredible journey would not have been possible without the 500 enterprises from all across India who shared their time, vulnerabilities, and stories with our team. We would also like to thank the many founders, investors, funders, experts, community builders from within and outside India who recognized the urgency of this exercise, helped us navigate nuances of financing, data, enterprise models, policy, and so much more. This report is dedicated to all of you, really. We would like to thank Urmi Sengupta from the team and the team at C3 Grantmaking for their patience, guidance, support at every step of the way, and the team at Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship who supported us as our India partner. We could not have done this without Astrid Scholz and her team at Zebras Unite for anchoring this project as our fiscal sponsor and really being co-learners in this journey because they are also huge proponents of capital co-design to really de-risk for a lot of investors to come together to take a chance on the sector, to take that leap of faith. A big thank you to our research partners and community collaborators who stuck with us till the very end, the Social Investment Consultancy and Catalytic. Thank you for being with us till the very, very end. Couldn't have done it without you. Our incredible community partners. So if you think we magically arrived at 516 enterprises, let me tell you, we started with 2,000 enterprises. And only 500 finally took the survey. And that could not have been possible without our community partners, Creative Dignity, CoLib, World Fair Trade Organization, ICA, Good Market Global, Catalyst 2030 NASE, and Impact Entrepreneur. In particular, we would like to offer our sincere gratitude to Kinjal Sampath, Saurabh Bhattacharya, Shravan Shankar, Anand Bhagwati, Meera Goradia, Neelam Chibbar, Samir Sathe, Rushil Palvajhala, Dr. Anandana Kapoor and Swati Mudli, who stepped in at various phases of our research, and Amit Garg, I'm missing him, at various stages of our research to guide and support our research process, because none of us were born talking finance, let me tell you that. I have catalytic capital coming out of my ears right now, but I promise you, when we started in 2021, we had no clue what we were doing for most parts. Last but not the least, please bear with me, I would like to invite the incredible women-led team that worked on a research on financing a sector led by women. Starting with Nima Srinivasan, the founder of Catalytic, led the research and is the person responsible for getting us the first of its kind segmentation, which I hope you will all continue to use. Aparna Subramaniam, who many of you have interacted with, have been in touch with, participated in the research, in writing, in editing reams and reams of content over and over again, sometimes even 20 times the same piece, and ultimately the creative direction of Business of Handmade. Bonnie Chu, the managing director of the Social Investment Consultancy, our research partner, really helped us anchor the language and direction around capital, and she was reworking, pages as late as 2 days back, but she cannot join us. She sits in the UK. Rashmi Salyan, who brought her expertise with impact investment to the table and tells me that she's finally found her love for impact investment after feeling completely disillusioned with the sector at one point. Shailaja Sachin, 200M's own fashion and sustainability expert, also responsible for the curation of installations at Kula with Hat. And yeah, she has harassed a lot of you, I believe, last year. Amrita Krishna, writer, researcher, social media expert, and the person who made sure we remember to smile along the way despite this many, many odds in trying to piece this project together. The folks who work behind the scenes are core team anchors to make sure 200M survived and held strong. Zhao Yu Yao, she's sitting in China, but is here with us in spirit. Many of you were also in touch with her. Prachi Bajpai, Mihir Doshi, whose continued support, I wouldn't know even how to quantify. In the past few years, many of you have asked me, who has designed the websites of 200 million artisans? Yes, I know all of you wanted to know that. Who's designed 200 million artisans website? Who's designed the BOH website? Who's designed BOH second edition? Well, that is Shreya Gupta. She's a visual artist, a designer, and has been the person behind 200M's website, BOH1, and now BOH2, along with Aparna Subramaniam. This project also saw incredible volunteer hours from 200M's global volunteer community, for which we are eternally grateful. I would like to call out the contributions of, starting with Lakshmi Shivram, also the person who named Kula from our team, and really the mother hen of our team, Isha Chaudhary, who's a fellow at 200 Million Artisans and is also studying, undertaking a very interesting research project on the digitalization of handmade cooperatives in India. Karan Patel, Naren Logani, Sanya Joshi, Tejal Chabra, Karthik Kaviraj, Tanya Kasliwal, Sumedha Paul, Harshika Gupta. And last but not the least, I would like to thank Sneha Ulal Goyal, who stepped in to support our team in comms, advocacy, project management for Kula, and more, while we balance demands between finishing BOH and trying to put together Kula. And Shruti Grover, if she's there, thank you. These are all the kids on my team. And Megha. Why did I miss you out? And Megha, please join us. Megha, Shruti, Naren are also supporting us with Kula. So this is my team, and this is the team that put together Business of Handmade, second edition.
Priya, I would like you to stand in the center. Please take a quick group photo. Ladies and gentlemen, can you give a big round of applause to this team who has been slugging it through the last 2 years? Quick photo op, quick photo op.
Quick. I can just say I'm relieved.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We can't wait to read the report. For everyone's viewing, the report is now live on the website at Business of Handmade 2, that's numeric2.com. You can also scan the QR code, read it, check it, it works. So you can take a few minutes to do this. We'll be broadcasting this every now and then in case you're missing it out. But yes, you can also go to Business of Handmade 2, numeric2.com to download the report.